Hi, everybody. Thank you all so much for being here today. We are super excited. This is our second installment of our Common System Listening Session series, where we are hoping to gather feedback from you, clubs in the field, about what the system needs to do for you. As a context setting for the session, all of the things that we'll be talking about today are gathered from clubs prior to today. We know we have a ton of new faces and new email addresses of you folks joining us, and we are so glad you're here. Anything that's being discussed today is content that has been written by clubs since the start of this project, really back in March. So quick ground rules of engagement for today. As I am very, very honored to be co-hosting with Minnie Anand from the Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Washington, who I'll introduce to you in a second. Minnie is going to be the face of today's webinar, talking us through all of the capabilities and requirements for front desk operations and basic attendance. On the back end, I will be personing, if you will, the chat and question function. So if you see something that Minnie is presenting on the slide and you were wondering, hey, does this mean this? Does this mean this? Or, hey, Minnie mentioned the system requirement that clubs had was this. Can I also write this requirement? Type it in. We would rather have 17 million requirements come through or have 100 people echo the same sentiment so that we know that requirement is truly needed than have a kind of a ghost town in the chat feature. So feel free to call out. I will be typing back as feverishly as possible with hopes of being able to respond to everybody, but please know that if you don't get a response from entering into the chat box, that we download all those comments and we'll be following up with you afterward. But know that whatever you type in will be read and will be seen and heard. One other quick piece of context setting for today. So again, we mentioned we want to hear any and all feedback so that we can create the ideal system for clubs. That's really our goal with this project. And as we get further along in the project, we are likely going to have to be prioritizing which requirements are going to go first, which are going to be coming later in the project. And so learning all of them now will help us get this list in place. And then as we start prioritizing and the project gets rolling, we'll come back to you, the advisory network, to help us prioritize. You know, we could do these things now, this one thing now, or we could do these 8 things now. Which is more important for you to have ready sooner? So this is the first step in our conversation about requirements, and we'll be gathering more feedback from you as our system begins to get built and rolled out. We are likely going to have to balance how many requirements we have, the scope of the project, and the timeline, how quickly we want things out. And so we will always be coming back to you, the advisory network, as our sounding board for decisions we're making on this project. And that is hopefully the most talking I am going to do today. I look forward to chatting with you in the chat box. But without further ado, it is my esteemed honor and pleasure to introduce to you a colleague and coworker of mine, Minnie from the Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Washington. So Minnie, by all means, take it away.
Good afternoon. Good morning to those on the West Coast. Minnie Anand. I work at Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Washington. I'm the Director of Member Impact, so I deal with I help with develop the stories that we tell our funders and our stakeholders. Actually, I celebrate my 5th anniversary in the movement tomorrow. Tomorrow will be my 5th year. And to the Common System Project, I really have been the cheerleader, if you will. I'm the one who always wants to make data a party and make data sexy and slow. And so that is really my role in the in the Common Members Management Group. And if you have seen our new video, I do play a small role in talking about our data. So please check that video out. I think it'll give you some great information about the member management system. And so what we're going to do today, I'm going to give you a quick overview of our session and letting you know what is today's session and what is not today's session. Today we're going to talk about some of the things that the new system will do for you, but we will not necessarily go into adding new things today. This will not be a time to make specific suggestions or ask questions about specific capabilities. That's what the whole series is for. So today we're going to really talk about our basic function of front door attendance. And hopefully you will join us for more sessions so you will understand what we're going to be doing and what the scope of this member management system is. It's much more than members. And so let's think about some of the guiding principles for this initiative. We always want to focus on the end user. That's those who are the front door attendance takers. That's the CEOs who need reports pulled. That's your directors of operation. How can I make this system easy and quick? We want to make quality easy. We don't need to have a kid who's 0 years old. We want to standardize whenever possible. We want to provide options for configuration. People in DC may not need the same options as people in Iowa. So we also want to consider all club types. We want to make sure that we're thinking of a club that serves 300 members a day, a club that serves 30, a club that's on a military base, a club that's in Alaska. So we wanted to make sure that we are considering all kinds of clubs and focusing on our end users. The next thing is the process and the timeline overview. So you can see some of the benefits of the Common Member Management System. And I'll let you choose what you're most excited about. But for me and my organization, I think I'm really excited about the opportunity for this system to integrate with other systems and other data. One of the big issues that we have in our organization is our grants and managing our grants with our HR system, making sure we're tracking all the kids. And so if all of those systems can talk to each other and be more seamless, I think that will make our jobs easier. It will make reporting better. And so that's one of the benefits that I'm most excited about as this new member management system rolls out.
Minnie, I'm sorry. I promised I wasn't going to interrupt, but I've been getting some questions, and I just want to give a quick heads up.
Of course.
Okay, awesome. So for folks that are interested in getting a copy of this PowerPoint, I have uploaded the PowerPoint document to the handout section of the GoToWebinar kind of mission control space. So where you see the questions panel, there should be a drop down for handouts, and you can download this PowerPoint that Minnie's presenting right from there. All right, Minnie, back to you.
Thanks, Dana. Excuse me. And if you go to the next slide, there we go, additional capability details. So one of the things that we did back in March, we asked 187 organizations, actually we asked a lot of organizations, and we got feedback from 187. And we said, what system capabilities do you need? And if you look at this list, we see that front door attendance was at the top of the list. But if you also notice that we don't fulfill the needs of over 50% of clubs until we get down to the 14th capability. So we understand that clubs need to do complex things with information, with data, with tracking their members and tracking other organizational information. So we've been gathering system functionality needs since March, and these listening sessions are organized by capability, and they were created to ensure that staff potentially using a specific function see what is documented to date and share feedback about that capability. So, but today I really want us to focus on front door attendance, because I think every club, that is the basic universal need of every club. We have to know who's in the building, how many kids we have in the building, and what they're doing. So what about front door attendance? The front desk, as we all know, is really is one of the hearts of the club. A lot happens at the front door. And so the functionality in this section is a high-level overview that club professionals have provided over the past 9 months. If you do not hear a specific piece, please join us for another session. What we will talk about in this session, we'll talk about how you print cards, how you use cards. We'll talk about managing front door attendance. We'll talk about alerts, offline attendance, member demographic profiles, and real-time reporting. But what we won't delve into today, and we hope you come back for these sessions, we'll talk online registration. We'll talk about that November 14th, next week. And that includes online parent portals, which I know a lot of organizations are excited about, online enrollment and the fee management processing. Also, we'll talk about program enrollment and management. That's on December 5th. And then on December 7th, we'll talk about fee management. How do you collect your sports fees? How do you deal with summer camp registration? How do you collect your bus fees, your day camp fees? Those are types of things that we know that each club, each organization needs those functions, and we have a specific listening session for those functions. But today, let's dive into the meat and potatoes. So let's talk about card printing and usage. There are five basic things that I want to mention. We all know that membership cards really give the young people a sense of belonging. So we want to make sure that your membership card represents you. We want you to have the ability to print and configure your own card. Do you want your org logo on it? Do you want it blue or purple or pink? You can also select which demographic fields that you want to go on your card. And we're actually going to talk about demographics in a moment. And additionally, do you want the child's pictures on them, or do you just want barcodes? Store an existing card or barcode as a card on record. How many of your young people already have school IDs or library cards that you know they carry with them? Do you want to sync that to be part of their membership card? That's a possibility, in fact. We want to make sure that your young person doesn't have to carry 7 cards when they can carry 1. But my favorite option is the digital card or the digital barcode. I'm a Starbucks junkie, and I never carry my card to Starbucks. I always have my cell phone. But one of the coolest things is I can whip my card out, I can whip my phone out, open the app, and I can scan my card to pay for my purchases, collect my points, or whatever other function I need to do at Starbucks. Why can't your Boys and Girls Club member card be the same way? That's where we're going. That's exactly what we want our members to do, have that Starbucks experience at the front door. Additionally, have you ever needed to scan your members into another program or print their barcodes for some other reason, maybe for assessments that they'll be taking? We can also print barcodes for labels. So you can print for clubs wanting to place their barcode on another card, or they want to make their own homemade card. You don't necessarily have to order batch cards from the company. You can print your own in any way you'd like. And then another thing you can do is, let's say you just had your membership drive, and then you just registered 500 new members, and you printed 400 cards, and that last 100 need cards. We will have the system set flags to notify you that this last 100 members need their cards printed. And the good thing about that will tell you, oh, I need to make sure I print these cards so that each of these members will have a card. We want to make this as easy and painless as possible, so we will take the thinking out of the work for you in this process. The system will do the hard work. All you have to do is hit print. Next, we'll talk about front door attendance. We know that if you don't take attendance, your branch director or your director of operations or whomever needs those numbers will come to you and say, how many kids are in the club today? So we understand that this is the most basic function of a person at the front desk. So when we think about front door attendance, we understand that all clubs have different needs. Some clubs may have 3 or 4 different entrances. Some clubs may not really have an entrance because they may be housed in a school. So the kids come down the hall into the gym, and it's not a formal front entrance. So we want to make taking attendance easy. You can take attendance on a computer, in any browser, Google, Chrome, Safari, Firefox, whatever your choice, with a scanner, on a tablet, or on your cell phone. We understand that club life is not a sit-down life. So we want to make sure that you have all of these functions in your hand. Another feature that we really think will be important is that staff, volunteers, and members can scan in simultaneously. What do I mean by that? So let's say you have Miss Roberta who's coming in to sign in she's a volunteer and she leads Smart Girls. And you have Sally who's coming in to participate in Smart Girls. Sally scans her card, we see that she's present, and Miss Roberta comes in, she scans her card, and she starts her volunteer hours. We don't need to exit out of the screen to get to another screen for Miss Roberta to sign in. Same interface, and the system will be smart enough to differentiate Miss Roberta from little Sally, so that we will understand we can be able to track our volunteer hours, and we'll be able to track our members at the same time. Another thing that I think is really, really, really important, is authorized pickups are able to identify themselves. We will talk really a lot more about this in our licensed childcare session on December 14th. We know that there's a lot of states who have a lot of legal language around authorization about who can pick up young people. We also understand that clubs have different policies about their safe passage, who can take a child out of the building, who cannot. And so we will talk more about this for our licensed childcare session. So even if you don't run a licensed childcare, I think you should still join us for that session, because we will talk more about what the system can do for you in terms of marking who can and who cannot pick up your young people. The other thing I want to talk about is displaying real-time rosters of people in the building. It's great to know that you have 257 people in the building, but you also want to know, is the Kennedy family in the building? You can look and see, yes, the Kennedys did sign in, all 6 of them signed in, so when mom calls, you can say all 6 of them are here, and you know that John Kennedy signed in at 4:53, Jacqueline Kennedy signed in at 3:57. And so you will have ability to do that. Additionally, you can take a member can have attendance at multiple sites. Members can attend multiple units or clubs from the same organization without needing to register at each site separately. The good thing about this is if you have an activity at one club and you need to go to another club to do something else, you can just scan in and your attendance will be counted. And that's great, so you don't have to move your home club from club to club. And you can also access emergency demographic information from the attendance screen. How many times have you had a young kid come up to you who's busted his lip playing kickball or whatever he's doing, and you need to call his parents because he's bleeding? Instead of trying to find his file, go look in his membership file, find the parent's phone number, you can simply type in, you know that John Kennedy is in the building, you can start typing his name, and his information will pop up. And that is the beauty of, not only do you want your front desk attendants to say, yes, we have these kids in the building, but beyond that, those rosters need to be able to work for you. Not only can you scan in members, you can also type them in manually, because every club may not have a scanner, or you may not be able to use your cell phone, so you can still type in John Kennedy's first name or last name or the first couple of letters, and his name will automatically populate so that you can click on it. Another thing that I think is really important in attendance as well is you can filter attendance in specific groups. Let's say you have a school. For us, we have one of our clubs, they have about 40 members who come from one school at the same time. And so we filter that school out, and we can have the KIPP roster or the DC Prep roster. And we see all of the kids walking in the door at the same time from that school, and we can say, okay, here are our KIPP kids, and we can check them all in at the same time. We can also, let's say our kids the KIPP kids were going on a field trip, we can filter those kids and create a field trip form to take with us as we go on our field trip. We can check them in and then bring them back to the club. So your attendance rosters, your live attendance rosters from the kids who are present in the building can be used for other functions and purposes. So you can create your bus list, you can create your snack list, you can create maybe your prize list for today. If you want to create a raffle, for example, because of the kids who attended the building today, you can print out the list of names and randomize them and pick number 57 on the list. because you have this live roster and you're able to do functions from the live roster. And the last thing that I think is really, really important as we're thinking about mobility and being able to access information quickly, if you've ever had to look up a child, let's go back to the example of John Kennedy bust his lip, and we need to call his parents, and we're looking up the information on our cell phone. Okay, we find the phone number, 888-555-1111. Instead of us trying to remember that number, get out of the system, and then go into our feature, the new system will allow us to dial straight contact phone number if the attendant is taken on a cellular device. So essentially, if John Kennedy's phone number is there and it's entered in the correct format, which it will be because the system will alert you if it's not, you'll be able to push to call immediately. And that's a cool feature because if you're trying to save time and you're not good at remembering numbers, this will be really, really helpful.
Hey, Minnie.
So yeah, Dana.
Do you mind if I hop in real quick? Sorry, guys, we're tag teaming this as questions are coming in. So thank you guys for putting some questions in the chat box. And so there are questions about incident reports. So yes,
Yeah.
the system is absolutely going to be doing incident reports, and there is an entire session that's going to be dedicated to case management and incident reports on November 29th. Because we want to make sure there's so much to cover in front door attendance that we wanted to give this its due. And I am going to pass it back to Minnie.
Are there other questions, Dana? If we want to take a minute or two for any other big ones that we see, any other themes?
Yeah, nope, that was the big one. I've gotten a couple of questions about incident reports, and I just wanted to let folks know that, yes, it will be addressed, and so much so that it has a session unto itself.
It does. And I've got to see some of the fields and functions of the incident report, and I think you will be very excited. And I think you will be very, very impressed, and I think it will capture the information that you need. So please make sure you come back for that session as well. The next thing that we'll talk about are alerts. If you see here in the picture, I'm sure most of you can relate to how many of you have to write a message to John's parents or Jacqueline. You know, Jacqueline forgot her swim cap today, so we had to charge her. Please send $5 tomorrow, or please make sure you sign John's permission slip so he can go on the boat trip next week. And you put little letters out to the parents. This looks all too familiar, I'm sure. So one of the things that we want to make sure that the new system does for all of us are create alerts. Create alerts when parents come in to get their children, create alerts when our members sign in or sign out, depending on how you have the alert set up, when volunteers sign in, sign out, when staff sign in, sign out. So what do you mean by alert, Minnie? I'm so glad you asked. An alert simply will generate a noise for a certain action. Either there's a system error. So I'm going to give you one that I think, let's kind of talk about one that I know we've all had, is let's say you enter in an email address. Instead of putting in the @ symbol, you put in maybe a 2, or you put in something and it's not really a complete valid email address. You will get an alert. This is not a valid email address. Or let's say you put in a phone number and you don't put all the digits in. It will not let you proceed, and you will get a system error because you have not entered your data in correctly. But also you can generate alerts for pop-up reminders. So if we once again need to pay for, if Susie needs to bring in her Smart Girls field trip permission slip, we can remind her that Susie, bring in your Smart Girls field trip form, or when Susie's mom comes in to sign her out, it'll alert us, oh, remind Susie's mom, hi Susie's mom, please give us, sign her Smart Girls field trip permission slip. We can also create alerts for members, volunteers, or staff that appear on check-in. So when someone scans in, tell Jim Clark to bring home his jacket from Lost and Found because we found it, and we let the parents know. But we need to remind him because clearly that's how it ended up in Lost and Found, because he forgot it all last week. We can also attribute alerts to multiple members, volunteers, or staff. Let's remind all of the Torch Club members that they have their sleepover coming up next week, so they need to make sure they bring all of their items and bring their canned goods for our canned food drive. Every member that we know is enrolled in the Torch Club program, we can send an alert to them. So when they sign in or their parents go look on their parent portal, they will see that information. And that's the beauty of the system. But also, I think one of the good things is, let's say we turn off an alert because we have 5 people at our desk and we don't want the system to keep beeping. Think about your alarm clock in the morning when you want those extra 8 minutes of sleep. You don't want to turn it off completely because then you won't get up and then you'll totally be late and miss everything. You just want to hit snooze for a while. So the alerts will have snooze features to remind you again in an hour or to remind you again tomorrow or whatever, however you set those parameters. But once you have completed a job, you can turn the alert off. The other one I think that's really important, and you may not have thought about it in this way, is we want to attach or set alerts to particular demographic fields. So when a club member maybe goes from 12 to 13, and we want to move them from our younger members to the teen center, we have an alert for their birthday, and we do a big maybe party for their crossing over to the teen center. Or let's say you have a volunteer who's about to have their background check is about to be expired, or it is expired. You can set an alert so that you don't have a volunteer who's coming into the club with an expired background check. That's what we mean by attributing alerts to particular fields. I think it's really, really important to think about how can these alerts be helpful, because I know as front desk people, you get busy answering the phones, dealing with the bloody lips, printing out permission slips, trying to sign in 400 kids. And so sometimes you just need somebody to be your personal assistant. That's essentially what we want this member management system to be for you, is your personal assistant. You can set it up to do the things that you need to do. So if that means sending you an email reminder or setting alerts for you to remind you to do things, or reminding members or staff or volunteers to do things so you don't have to do it every time, then we most definitely are excited that this feature will do that for you. And now I want to spend a little bit of time on this slide, because I think that when we think about, I've been talking about demographics throughout the session. And so I want you to take a minute to look at this slide. I'll give you a second to kind of read over it. And I want to tell you what this slide does and does not mean. This slide does not mean clubs have to have these demographic fields. However, if clubs want to track something, we would love to have it built at the national system level. So if my good friend Jackie builds an awesome report in Denver and I see it and I'm like, oh my God, Jackie, can I please have your report that's based on gender, age, and left-handedness, which is not one that we track here, but if we did, and if I have the same demographic fields like Jackie has them, she can send that report over to me and it's beautiful. If not, the report doesn't work as nicely because the system can't pull the same information. So one of the reasons that we want to build these common demographics in the profile for members is so that we will be speaking the same language. So we will literally be comparing apples to apples as opposed to talking about apples and oranges. I know it's all fruit, but they're very different indeed. So we want this information to be available for other clubs if something's great, like my friend Jackie in Denver. If it's built at a national level, incorporated into a report, all clubs can use that report. So if there are 900 versions of local clothing size and we will build a report, it probably won't work for the 899 other clubs who created their own version of clothing size. So we really want to standardize what we mean by these demographics. And we have an awesome group as part of our working group called the Data Definitions Group, and they will talk more about, as the system rolls out, you will see more of these things very, very clearly defined for you, so we can talk about what do we mean by race and ethnicity, what do we mean by some of these other terms, and we'll talk more about that later on in the process once the system rolls out and you're able to play with it and you'll understand what these definitions mean, and we'll all be speaking this language with our common member management system. So while there will be a ton of demographics available, all orgs will not and don't have to use them. Nothing that we're presenting to you is an all or nothing. You don't have to, either you take it all or you take nothing. The whole beauty of this, as much as it's a common member management system, we're going to give you the base ingredients. It's like baking a cake. Everybody gets the cake, but then you get to decide how you want to decorate it, how you want to ice it, and how it's going to suit best your needs. And so some clubs may only need 10 of these items. Some clubs may need all of them, and that's okay. We just want to make them available in case you do need them. There will be an entire group, like I said, that focuses on these drop-downs and what they mean, and you will have very clear definitions and very specific defined parameters of each of these groups, so you will understand what we mean by your school lunch, or what we mean by housing types or housing compositions. Those things will be defined for you, so there will be no confusion. So once again, we're all speaking a common language. This list, I just want to be clear though, this list was compiled based on a demographic landscape survey of clubs, and of what things we needed to track. This is not a list of what BGCA needs to track. I want to be very clear about that. Only the items that are in red will be on the annual report. I want to let you guys know that this is our database. This is not a BGCA mandate. This is something that BGCA is assisting us in, but BGCA took the lead on this because club professionals like me and my colleagues around the country, and many of you on the call, said we need something that's for us. We have, 3,000 organizations and 4,000 different member management systems. We wanted to make sure that we're all speaking the same language. So when we reached out and we cried out to BGCA, hey, we need something that will help make our data jobs easier, they responded, and they brought together a group of people from across the country, the working group, as well as the advisory network, which all of you are a part, to advise and inform these decisions. And I think we're going to have a much better decision because people in the field who use the machinery are creating the machinery. And I think that will ultimately give us the best product possible. So this is our database. BGCA does not own our data. BGCA will not reach its hand in the cookie jar and take our data. They will not get to see John Kennedy's specific information. All they will see is the aggregate data of your organization. So we need to understand that, I know that was a lot of concerns that we heard very early on in the process about BGCA taking our data and owning our data and being kind of big brother. And that's really not the role and approach that they want to take in this. They really are taking, let me walk with you and help you and build this thing for you and help you create what will be ideally the perfect complement to the work that you're doing. They want to make our jobs with outcomes easier, and so they're helping us build the tool to make that happen.
Quick question insert here, Minnie, real quick. So I've gotten a lot of really great questions about alerts. So when Minnie was talking earlier about alerts, each organization is going to be able to use that alert feature however makes sense for you. So there won't be a standard alert, but let's, to the point Minnie made earlier, let's say Jim Clark's mom calls at 9 a.m. to bring home his jacket, but Jim Clark doesn't get in until 3 p.m. and the person who takes that call works part-time and leaves at 12 p.m. and you want your front desk staff that gets there at 1 p.m. to get that message, that's when you might use an alert to let somebody at the front desk know something that they need to communicate to somebody at the point of entry at the club. And how you use that feature is completely up to you. Just want to hone back in on something that I know Minnie said, but just to reiterate, the demographics that you see on this slide are things that organizations have said we track, and therefore, like Minnie said, for reporting purposes and to make your lives easier, That's why we would want to, if you're going to track it, we would want to create the field at a common level. But I see a lot of questions here around permissions and waivers. Yes, they'll totally be customizable. We will put some stuff up there. So if you have a public relations media waiver, but you're looking to switch it up, you can look at the suggestions from clubs across the country, but ultimately it is totally up to your organization what content you include and do not include. We're just putting content up there to provide folks a starting place so you're not starting from scratch, which is one of the beauties of being able to pull from best practices of lots of clubs across the country. So back to you, Minnie.
Yeah, thanks, Dana. I think that's really important, is to understand that all of this is things that you across the country have asked for, and that's the beauty of, once again, I want to reiterate that point, that's the beauty of all of this, is that we're working together to create something that's going to make our lives easier. So now that we've talked a little bit about member demographics and what that profile looks like, what are we going to be able to do with that? Like, why is that important? Why do we care? Well, I mean, you all know why we care, but I want to talk about some of the things that you'll be able to do in the new system. And Dana mentioned a couple of them as we were in that moment. One of the things that you'll be able to do is upload multiple documents. So when we think about report cards, for example, or when you think about some of the other IEPs that a young person may have, those are types of things that you can put in their file that will be linked to their profile, so that you'll be able to see that information when you click on John Kennedy's profile. You'll be able to see his information. Your different staff will be able to, depending on their personas, their permissions, be able to view that information. Another great thing that we want to be able to do with our members is understand how long they've been in our club and what they've been doing while they were in our club. So we will be able to maintain historical record of membership. So Johnny came to the club when he was 6, when he was 7. They had to move away when he was 8 and 9, but then he came back when their family returned. His father was in the military, so they had to move away. And he came back. We want to be able to track all of those things and see what Johnny has done in his time of the club, because when he's 17, he's running for Youth of the Year. And now we're able to kind of go back and look at his time at the club and build his profile and talk about his service to the club. And so the member management system will really help you do that in a nice, organized, clean kind of way. Some of the other things that we talked about earlier, going back to alerts and such, one of the things that we also talked about at the very beginning of this call when we talked about our guiding principles was we want to make quality easy and we want to keep the data clean. One of the ways that we do that is we will make sure that the system validates as you're entering information. Are you entering email addresses in the correct form? If not, the system will alert you and let you know that you're not. In fact, it may not let you, depending on your settings, it may not let you proceed until you fix that. If email is a required field for your organization, then until you fix that field, you may not be able to proceed to the next thing or save that member's profile. Same thing with addresses, with correct addresses. If you've ever been on some websites, they'll say, based on the U.S. Postal Service, this is how your address should look. Would you like to update and correct? And you click yes, and then it changes and adds the extra 4 digits on your zip code, and it changes the way your street address looks. The system will be linked, and it will have that validation as well, because we want to make sure that we're being as accurate as possible in this information. Duplicating or preventing duplicates. This is a big problem for my organization, especially when we were first learning to use our current member management system. Instead of figuring out how to retrieve the member, we would just create a new file. And so a club that has 700 members looks like they had 1,200 because we have 500 duplicates. And that's a data nightmare. But one of the things that you will be able to do is say, okay, if the kid has the same last name, first name, and date of birth, it's probably the same kid. The system will alert you as you're filling out the member profile for your new member that you're putting in. Hey, we found a John Kennedy born on July 27, 2006. Are you sure you want to create another John Kennedy born on July 27, 2006? And you probably will say no because it's the same kid. And so the system will help you keep your data clean. And you get to choose which demographic fields you want to prevent your duplicates. So if you want to say left-handedness, if you want to choose based on race or grade or their street address, you get to make those decisions. Generally, those are the defaults that we look at: first name, last name, and date of birth. You'll also, thinking about, one of the things that my staff have told me repeatedly is at the beginning of each school year, we see that Johnny was in 5th grade last year, Johnny's in 5th grade this year, and Johnny may or may not be in 5th grade next year. Because what the system does not do automatically, your current system, I know ours doesn't automatically roll your students into the next grade. There will be the option to roll students automatically into the next grade, and then you can decide if a student, for whatever reason, is retained in their current grade, or you're not sure of their status, you can decide not to promote them to the next grade. But that is one of the features that the new system will do for you, is automatically roll students to the next grade. So little Johnny will not be in the 5th grade for 7 years. He will not be 17 and still in the 5th grade. One of the other things, we want to set up membership expiration dates. I think this is really, really important when we think about making sure that we renew membership cards, we update profiles, when we think about fee management and collecting membership fees. All of these things work together. So we want to make sure that memberships, that we're accurately setting that date. I know some systems do this really well, and then others are not so good at it. And so we want to make sure that this is something that our new system will do as a default, to make sure that, if your membership year starts on January 1st, on December 31st, it will alert you that, all of your memberships are expiring who has renewed already, or if your membership is year to year or year over year. So if your kid signed in April 1st, then the next April 1st he needs to renew. It'll let you know that, hey, Johnny's membership is about to expire. You can set an alert, and you can send out an email to his parents and remind Johnny as well. Another thing is the membership system will automatically calculate your age based on date of birth. There are a few reports that sometimes ask, how many 7-year-olds do you have? And if you use your annual report, that's not a live report. So that's a very static report. It's once a year. So yes, during annual report, you may have had 83 7-year-olds, but really in your club now you have 97 7-year-olds. And so what you can be able to do is filter this out and look at, you can pull out a filter and run a report that says, I have how many 7-year-olds, and based on the date of birth that you have in the system, it will let you know. And I think that's really important for different grants, or different stakeholders may have questions about different age groups, and so you're able to do that. You can upload photos to profiles, and then the beautiful thing is once you upload them to profiles, you can use them to print your membership cards. You can do them individually, or you can print them in batch. And then you can create and modify user-defined fields, so things that you put in that you want to have for your club. Once again, this system is customizable for your organization. We will give you some base content. We will have some things that all organizations have access to, but we also understand that there may be something in DC that we track that they don't track in Alaska, but there may be some specific things in Alaska that they need to track that they don't track in Iowa. The system will allow you to have that flexibility and those options. And then, as we also talked about, progress groups of members to the next grade one at a time, or like I said, you can also do that in batch. Offline attendance. Dana can attest to this. This has been a big one that we've also received a lot of comments and questions about. So I'm going to do my best to talk about it today. And if you have some questions, please feel free to type your questions or comments in the chat box at this time, because I know this has been a big, big, big point of discussion for many, many organizations and clubs. So please feel free to type your questions and comments. So let's go back to the Starbucks example. Like I said, I love Starbucks, and I oftentimes do a lot of work at Starbucks. I actually write at Starbucks often. And so let's say that your club does not have internet. And in order for you to do any work for the club, you have to go to Starbucks, maybe before you go to work or after the club closes. So how would offline attendance work? Essentially, edits that are made offline would synchronize with the live system as frequently as possible when the internet access is available. So if you have attendance and you have your attendance rosters, that you take attendance and you say, oh, these 73 kids are here, boom. When I'm able to upload that to the system, it will sync with that. And so I'll still be able to see how many kids I had in the building that week. It will save all of that data for you. And we have made sure that one of the requirements that we set of the system is that it needs to be able to store a sufficient amount of data for clubs who may not have access to the internet for days at a time. Hopefully you're able to have access to the internet at least once or twice a day. But for organizations who may not have access to the internet for 2 or 3 days at a time, the system will be able to hold that data for you and upload as soon as possible. You will be able to access profile data for your active and inactive members. So what you'll also be able to do is, if you want to look at some information about John Kennedy, you'll be able to look at his profile. You may not be able to make any edits, but you will be able to get his information. You'll be able to access your program enrollment and your rosters. This is great if you're going on a field trip and you need to take attendance on the bus just to make sure you have everyone. When you get back to the club, and you sync back to the Wi-Fi, that attendance will feed back into the system and we'll have the attendance for that trip or for that program. You'll be able to check members in and out of a club or activity. This is great for clubs who have to have front door attendance, but you also need to check kids in and out of your meal program. So you can have someone who is giving out meals in the kitchen, and they can be checking kids off there, and you may not have Wi-Fi in your whole building may not be wired for that. And so then when they come upstairs, it will sync to the live system so you can see your kids who received snack that day. And the wonderful thing about the offline system, I know that sometimes an offline system can look very, very different from the online system, but what we hope is that what we know is that the offline system will mirror the interface of the online system. And so whatever you see when we take front door attendance, that's what you will also see when you're trying to do an offline attendance. So the look and feel should feel just like you're online, and then once you get back online, everything will sync together. And then the other piece that we want to talk about is tracking other youth served. We often have outreach events, or we're at a school, or we may be at the local convention center doing a activity with the city, and there may or may not be internet access. We will talk more about this in a future session, but we are thinking about these things, and we have thought about them, we've had conversations around them, and we understand that that's a need of clubs, and we want to make sure that we give you that capability to track other youth served as well. And the last thing that I want to talk about is real-time reporting. So one of the things, I always like to think about things in relationship to other things. So one of the things that we love to do with our kids are science experiments. We like to show them if you add one element to another, something magical happens. If you add just a little bit of heat or you add a little bit of cold air, something can change. Water changes to steam, or water can change to ice. And that's the beautiful thing about reporting, real-time reporting, and that's what our member management system will do for you. We want to see dynamic reporting that tells you what's going on in your club at that very moment. If you have 27 girls walk in, you will see your overall attendance go up by 27, but you can also break down your demographic fields and filter out by demographic. So you can see that I have 33 boys and 27 girls in the club. Why is this important? Let me give you an example. If I'm trying to plan my program schedule for next quarter, and I want to say, what days do I have the most middle school girls in my building? And I've learned that Thursdays I usually have the most middle school girls in my building. And it's Thursday today. So I want to see, what does that look like on a regular Thursday. I see that at 4:45 I have about 53 middle school girls in my building, and I want to run Smart Girls at 5 o'clock. It probably is a really good idea for me to run Smart Girls at 5 o'clock. If I run that same report at 6 o'clock and I see that I only have 10 middle school girls, I can probably make the decision that it's not a good idea for me to run Smart Girls at 6 o'clock. And that's what real-time reporting can do for you. It can give you a snapshot of what's going on in your club at that moment and help you make decisions on how to really manage your club. And I think that that's really, really an exciting feature. I know some organizations, member management systems, do something like that now, or they've built reports that help that they can populate to do that, and other organizations don't. And so we want to make sure that we are giving everyone these options, because we think that this is an important feature as you manage your club. And so I think we are pretty much done for today, but I do want to encourage all of you to come back for the next sessions that will be occurring over the next 6 weeks, especially the session on December 19th. That's the session about reporting, and we will dive very deeply into reporting and what the new system, the functions and capabilities of reporting will be. If you have any questions, please ask them. Dana, I think we have about 7 minutes, so if we have any major thematic questions, go for it.
Yeah. There are a couple of points. I think a couple of folks joined us late, so I just want to give a quick overview, and then I can pass some questions to you, Minnie, because there are some great ones that I know you'll be able to answer. Sorry, I get distracted and excited when I see cool things come through on the question box. So the question was around what is the system that we're talking about? So just I know with everybody's coming to today's session with different levels of understanding of the project. Some of you may have been on the advisory network since March. Some of you may have been told to come to this by a colleague. So the project that we're talking about here is a common member management system, or at this point we're going to start rebranding it as a common system, because it is more than just member management for clubs across the country. So this is not an existing software provider that clubs are using. This is a system that BGCA and clubs are building together for the field, for club usage. And and I've been getting a couple of questions on here about price, so I'm going to talk a little bit about where we are in the process. So we are at the tail end of scoring and reviewing the request for proposals for this project. We are at the tail end because we're starting to talk about price. And so what we're going to be heading into next is a preferred vendor conversation and negotiations. So that is a part of the process that we're not going to be announcing out loud. We're not going to be sharing that we're in contract negotiations, because the more we are able to leverage our brand and leverage the scope of the organization will help us with contract negotiations. So if we were to share, this is the person that we're in contract negotiations with, we might lose some of our bargaining power, and it is our ultimate goal to get the absolute best price for clubs. It is also I'm actually going to pull up a slide that Minnie referred to in the beginning. Because we've been capturing requirements from all the clubs across the country, what you see on the screen here is all of the things that clubs need their member management system to do. And it's not a, wouldn't it be great if it could? It's, we really need our system to do these things. Otherwise, we cannot consider leaving our current system. And so that is why we are going to be building out these functionalities. And it is very likely that in order to do these functionalities, you might actually be having 5, 6, 7 different
Mm-hmm.
softwares in one place. And so it is likely that the common system will allow you, even if they're free softwares, it'll allow you to go to one place rather than having 7 distinct software solutions, which is something that we're really hoping to make things, like Minnie said earlier, ease of use on the end user is really, really the end goal. Um, Questions about what is the timeline for this? I've gotten that a bunch, so great question. Um, it we do not we expect to be piloting no sooner than July 2018 because we will be needing to finish contract negotiations and be building out the software. It is we will be piloting with organizations, and if you're interested in being part of the pilot, feel free to shoot me an email. The system is going to be online and not server-based. I see a couple of those coming through. Um, yep, great. There is so just a reminder, on Tuesday, next Tuesday, I saw a lot of questions about when can we let parents know when members signed in and relieve the call waiting at the front desk. Um, Next Tuesday's session is going to be all about online registration, the online parent portal, and communications, the ability to email and text message parents. So tune in for that. Our colleague Joey Schuler is going to be presenting. We're going to have a whole hour just on that functionality. So stay tuned. The last piece, yeah, of course. The last thing that I wanted to go over was a question from Pat. So Pat, thanks for being so patient. I know you asked this relatively early on, and it's a great place for us to end our conversation today. And by all means, please keep typing. I see stuff coming in, and this is great. So for folks that have attendance in multiple units, will each club get credit for their own attendance? And
Mm.
so that is something that we've been working with the working group on a lot. And the solution for that is that when when a member signs up at wherever the member signs up, quote unquote, that is where they are a member. That is where they will count, quote unquote, for members. If let's think about it through the lens of annual report, that's where Dana or Minnie is a member. But if Minnie goes to Club B down the street because they have a swimming pool on Wednesdays, Minnie counts towards their attendance. Minnie counts towards their daily visits, they count towards their ADA, but in terms of membership, Minnie would count towards her quote-unquote home club. The other benefit of a common system is if Minnie moves to Idaho, she is going to, when the Idaho organization starts entering in some key demographics about Minnie, it'll pop up and say, hey, you should call the Boys and Girls Clubs of Washington. It looks like this might be a member already in the system. And that way, data can be transferred from Washington to Idaho, and you'll have records of members' experiences and what they've participated in. And so one last place to end, lots of folks were asking about will I have to re-enter everything from scratch for the new system? That's really up to you. We will be working with organizations to migrate over data. And actually, Minnie, this is something that you and I presented together, yeah? The data migration conversation.
We did part of it.
Part of it, yeah. So organizations will be able to migrate over data from their current system. And for many organizations, you might be migrating over data from multiple systems. You might have one database for member management and one database for licensed childcare. And so data might be coming from multiple sources. So that is something that we will be working on with you as part of the implementation process. So yeah, so I want to be mindful of time and thank you guys all so much. You've done a great job in participating in the chat box. This was our first time kind of dividing and conquering between having an incredible club professional be the voice of the conversation and then me being on the back end. So um, thank you, and keep typing your questions, right? Because I'm going to be following up with you. So by all means, please continue to use that chat box functionality. Hopefully, we will see you on future webinars and future conversations. I wanted to just take a second to thank Minnie so much for her time and talent and expertise in helping to build this conversation, build this presentation, and actually facilitate it as well. So Minnie, you are such a treasure to the national project and also no doubt to the community and young people of Washington, D.C. So we are just so grateful that you gave us your time today. So yeah, so last question,
Thank
this
you,
is a good one.
Dana.
Yeah, Minnie, you're the best. We are so happy to have you. So thank you. And the question is, yeah, great question. How do you contact me with all of my questions? It is pretty hard to not find my contact information. I am the contact person on the BGCA member management team. Uh, I'm sorry, on the member management page. So on that upper right-hand corner, that's me. My email address is dbenjamin, BENJAMIN hyphen Allen, ALLEN at bgca.org. That is how you can get in touch with me. And the phone number that's on there is my cell phone, so you can catch me at any time. And we are recording this session. Give us about a week turnaround, maybe a little bit longer to get it up there, but all of the sessions will be recorded and posted on the landing page of the bgca.net member management screen. So if you want to pass this along to your team, they can watch it in the future. So thank you again, everybody. Minnie, thank you so much, and have a great afternoon. We hope to see you at future sessions.
Bye, everyone.